Good morning. It is Wednesday, July 19th, 10 a.m., and I'll call to order the Ottawa City Commission meeting. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mayor Crowley,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Skidmore,
Present.
Commissioner Graves,
Present.
Commissioner Kaler,
Present.
and Commissioner Clayton.
Present.
All right, we are here, so that makes a quorum. I'd like to welcome everybody, whether you're here in person or you're listening to us on some form of media. We'll start today's meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll have the invocation by Pastor Dakota Smith and maybe his daughter from Ottawa
Really
Bible
his
Church.
daughter.
Yeah, there you go.
Pastor Dakota Smith, that's what you need to say.
All right. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You can lower that if she needs it.
No.
Just you today, I guess.
Yeah, just me.
All right.
Something that needs to be said concerning your service. You know, behind the scenes, all the emails that you answer, all the times that you take to meet with people at coffee shops and conversations in the community, every time that you're at Walmart just getting groceries and you get stopped by someone unexpectedly but expectedly, for all of that that's involved in your job and in your service, it doesn't go unseen or unnoticed. I just want to say thank you. There's a lot more to your position than I think many realize, and truly just thank you for your service to our community. I just want to share a brief Bible verse today. I was reading this morning with a friend from John chapter 10. Jesus said that his sheep know him by name, and he knows them by name. And then Jesus also said that I came to give life, and to give life in abundance, which means life upon life. Not just the quantity of life, but the quality of life. And as a Christian, what I believe is that Jesus came to give both of those to us. So if I can just encourage you with those words, and thank you for serving our community, that's what I'd like to say. If you'd please bow your head and your heart with me, I'll go ahead and pray and continue the meeting. Father, thank you so much for our leaders here in this community. Thank you that you love them and that you know who they are and you see everything that they do. You see their hard work, you see their service, and I ask that you would strengthen them and equip them to continue to fulfill their duties, encourage them on the difficult days, encourage them when they're downcast, lift them up and remind them that the work that they're doing is to serve the people here. Give them strength to do that task. Thank you that, God, you don't just say that you love us, but you do love us, and you prove that to us through your Son. We thank you for today and for today's meeting, and we pray for all the items on the agenda, that they'd be discussed, and they'd be clear, and they'd be thorough, and we'd be able to make progress here for the sake of Ottawa. Thank you so much for the city and our leaders. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Pastor Smith, thank you for that invocation and certainly for those kind words. All right, that moves us on to our consent agenda, which consists of the minutes from our June 19th study session, our June 21st regular meeting, and our June 26th study session. An application for a new cereal malt beverage license for Riley Browning Barbering. I want to say barbecue for some reason.
Maybe that's next.
Maybe. At 230 and a half Main Street. An appointment of the city manager, Brian Silcott, to the Kansas Municipal Gas Agency, KMGA, Board of Directors for a 2-year term. And then the agenda approval. Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved. Thank you. That'll move us on to our regular agenda. Do we have any public comments?
We do. We have 2 registered for Hidden Lakes.
Okay, we'll wait till we get to that item. Item B is a declaration. At this time, I'd like to give the commissioners a chance to declare any conflict or communication they've had that might influence their ability to consider today's issues impartially.
I will note that I have received an email from the Harris family.
Thank you. I also would like to note that Mr. Harris and I stopped by my office about a week or so ago, and we had a discussion about this item also.
I guess along that same vein, I got an email as well and discussion.
Same.
Same.
All right. Just for the record, we're all there. All right, thank you. Anything else on declarations? All right, new business. Item A.
Request for approval of resolution approving the final plat and accepting the dedication of all easements and right-of-ways within the Hidden Lakes subdivision.
The Planning Commission has reviewed the final plat and recommends approval by a vote of 6-0. Director Landis, come on up, please. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. In your packet, you have a memo along with the final plat that has been presented to you and we've discussed in multiple prior meetings. But I would like to provide a little bit of a background for anyone who maybe hasn't heard some of the information regarding the subdivision final plat that's being presented to you. So this is phase 1 of the Hidden Lake subdivision, and the applicant is proposing approximately 8.95 acre residential subdivision located east of the intersection of 19th and Princeton Streets. It consists of 25 lots, 24 of those being single-family residential use, and the additional lot and tract for community use. The plat includes public street construction dedicated with new utilities, sidewalks, street lighting, and stormwater collection and management. This project overall has been seen, heard, and discussed since late in 2022. Early in this year, we brought the preliminary plat to you as a city commission, and at that time accepted a variance for the new street construction. The planning commission heard the final plat, and it held a public hearing in June of this year. And since then, we have had discussions with you as a city commission about the subdivision, the final plat, and heard from multiple neighbors in the area. The final plat came to us in March of 2023, and so we've been working through the details of that since that time. It's met the conditions of approval through the details of change for the traffic patterns to 19th. Although they're not completely finalized, that's something that city staff is working with the developers on, and will continue that work, and includes the stormwater study and drainage plans have been approved by the city engineer. The traffic study did not find a need for any additional improvements to the intersection at this time, although noted that with future development, that would be something we would need to look at. We're, again, as I mentioned, working on addressing the safety of Princeton Street and the intersection at 19th. We've been able to collaboratively work with Anderson Engineering, the city engineer, and Public Works on that item. And then Belmont Development has been engaged the entire time and is working with the neighbors and through those issues that have been brought to you for concern. The recommendation from the Planning Commission is that is acceptance of the findings presented by the planning staff, and then also a vote of 6-0 approval to move the final plat to the city commission for consideration of approval. And that's what is in front of you today, is a resolution that would approve the final plat and accept the easements and rights of way for the Hidden Lake subdivision. And the alternatives that have been provided to you in the packet are that you could approve the resolution accepting the final plat, easements, and right of way within 30 days of this initial conversation or consideration for approval. You could defer the action for an additional 30 days to allow modifications. However, you would need to direct what those modifications will need to be, and we will have to send written notice to the applicant and the planning commission. Or third, you could reject the plat and provide written notice again back to the applicant and planning commission citing the reasons. In the packet, there is the resolution for your consideration today. There's a vicinity map that shows the location of the subdivision, and then the final plat and the civil drawings, which you've seen all of those items at prior meetings. I didn't bring with me a presentation today because you've seen those maps in the past, and I do think that in the packet there was enough information for anyone who maybe hadn't been following along up to this point. So with that, I'm available for questions. Also, our development, we have a representative for the developer here as well, possibly online, and then we can see what we can do to answer any of the questions that you have.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for either Director Landis or possibly the developer rep? Okay. I'll take the two public comments. Let me read this paragraph as usual. Subject to the above restrictions, persons who wish to address the City Commission regarding items on the agenda may do so as the agenda item is called. Persons who wish to address the City Commission regarding items not on the agenda and that are under the jurisdiction of the City Commission may do so at this time when called upon the mayor. Comments on personnel matters and matters pending in court or with any other outside tribunals are not permitted. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Any presentation is for information purposes only. The governing body will take comments under advisement. Who's our first public comment?
Gary Harris.
Gary, please come on up.
Gary Harris, 1801 South Princeton.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning.
Good morning. In the last meeting, Ms. Landis stated that the purpose of the development agreement was to protect the city of Ottawa. Apparently, I'm under the wrong assumption or impression that being a citizen makes me part of the city, which doesn't make sense, but we talked about the International Property Maintenance Code. Mr. Silcott said that it only applied to existing structures and premises as stated in section 101.2 of the scope. My property was built as a residence in the 1950s. I believe that qualifies as an existing in 2023. Under his interpretation, as a victim of the violation, I have no rights because the violation itself is created by new construction, not existing conditions. Mr. Hanby said that I was mistaken about there being an emergency overflow structure. If I'm wrong about that, why is it drawn on the plans that I received from Anderson Engineering? Page C113, top middle. Right here. I've been repeatedly told that the engineers designed this and I shouldn't question it because they are licensed professionals. As we all know, engineers don't make mistakes. Not to be overly dramatic, but if the engineers don't make mistakes, maybe we should ask the victims of the Grand Teton Dam collapse or the victims of the Hyatt Regency Skywalk collapse how they feel about engineering mistakes. The Planning Commission recommended moving forward with some very specific wording regarding the citizen concerns in general, yet Ms. Landis never relayed that to the Commission, if any, in any of the open meetings. The last paragraph of the staff memorandum dated July 10th, 2023 just stated, quote, recommendation made by the Planning Commission with acceptance of staff finding and a vote of 6-0 approval to move the final plat to the City Commission for consideration of approval, end quote. The details of the Planning Commission's recommendations were not included. On a positive note, I'm glad to see what's been learned from watching other people's mistakes. The difference between falsifying documents and just not including the information. Mr. Finch explained to you, the Commission, that you have the right to move forward with this and that you didn't have to follow the Planning Commission's recommendations. If I was a Planning Commission member, that statement would make me question why I am bothering, wasting my time and energy sitting on that board at all, let alone doing it for free. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public comment.
Karen Harris.
Karen, come on up, please.
Morning.
Morning.
Karen Harris, 1801 South Princeton Street. Just a couple of quick points to keep in mind today as you're voting. The City Commission is an elected position, so technically you work for the citizens of Ottawa. I do pay a lot of taxes here, so I'm a citizen. I'm on the Franklin County Planning Commission, so I know what the Planning Commission's job is. The Planning Commission has a job to look at the nitty-gritty things, to make recommendations, to pass on to the City Commission or the Franklin County Planning Commission, because that's their job. And when certain things are voted on a certain way, it should be passed on to the commissions for that reason. That's how they wanted it to be. They put a lot of thought and effort into it. So it was voted on, that was not done. I would ask you to please take into consideration what your Planning Commission recommended. I would make a motion to approve based upon the fact that we're adding to the development agreement about the protect the owners for the property fences. Thank you.
Thank you. That's our only two public comments, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Do you have anything you'd like to say, Director Landis?
Sure. I think that in response to the public comments and as a reminder of our conversation on Monday, the items that were brought to the attention of those in the room at the Planning Commission meeting, and you heard the read out of the minutes and from the meeting itself, and I'm sure you've had an opportunity to watch that. And as well, we had the Planning Commission chair in the room at the time on Monday. The comments that and concerns brought by the Planning Commission on that day were the fences that had been requested by the property owners, the driveways that needed to be put back in place so that they could access their properties with the construction of that extension of 19th Street, and the stormwater overflow onto the property of the Harrises. Each of those items have been addressed, and I think we've talked about those from all the different angles to this point, but I do think it's worth, I guess, recovering them. The driveways are included in the infrastructure plans. The infrastructure plans are what dictate the covered items for street construction in the development agreement. So those have been taken care of. I consider those to have been taken care of prior to coming to you, so there was no need to specifically dwell on that item. The fences we've determined are outside of the development requirements, and the request for those are something that the developer is working directly with the property owners on. They're not a requirement of the development, and so we've deemed that those are more of a civil matter. Those are things that they need to work together on. The stormwater impact, and we've discussed the study and the impact of that on the surrounding properties. You've had the city engineer available to you. You've received, or we have the stormwater study itself was approved. So the stormwater construction of that detention and all of that part of the project is also covered under the development agreement by purview of it's been approved. It's part of the required construction for the project. That is covered under a letter of credit that they'll provide to us that'll cover the construction cost of that. The development agreement being in place so that if they were to default or stop in the middle of the project and walk away from the project, that the city could continue the project, finish it with the letter of credit dollars so that to meet the project construction as it's been designed. So those items are considered in the development agreement. The items that are of concern now are the fences and the overflow. Those are being considered outside of the construction of this project and what's directly related to the project. So I'm sorry if that wasn't mentioned to you earlier or if there was any confusion on that. Again, I just want to make sure that you understand what the concerns were that were brought by the Planning Commission and then how we've addressed those coming forward.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Please.
the state statutes clearly delineate with both a 2/3 and a 3/4 majority vote or supermajority vote for city councils and city commissions to override the recommendation of planning commissions. So it's not unusual for this to occur in events where it does. So there's adequate legal coverage and case law for that. And then also just to provide a little clarity as to the use of that 2018 International Property Maintenance Code, the sentence that I cited about it being for existing structures was in the effective use, essentially in the opening paragraph before you even get into the sections administering it, saying how the document is to be utilized.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any other questions? Is there anybody from, please?
I just have a question of the developer, if we could have him come up. Good morning.
Good morning.
In the spirit of good neighbors and how important that is, I know, and you've heard some of the comments made, I just kind of wanted to see anything else you wanted to add or anything we're missing here before we look at a vote on this possibly.
I would just mention that we've been visiting back and forth with Mr. Harris about some possible solutions on stormwater runoff on his property and working with him and the engineer on that. Haven't come to a final resolution, but I think he's provided a plan that we're agreeable to. So we're just trying to get some costs and move forward on that. We did talk with the engineer and the architect about keeping some of the trees behind the Martin's house. And it looks like if we rotate our playground around, we'll be able to keep that tree line back there, which will provide a natural barrier, thus not needing a fence. I think this will be a lot, if you drive past the property, you can see it's a pretty good barrier, a lot more than you'll get with a fence. So that is being worked on as well. So, but happy to answer any other questions. So.
Well, I personally appreciate you doing all that. And I know we have a commission up here. We have a duty to do what's best for the community at large. All of our positions are at-large positions. We're not represented by districts here. And so I see the importance of being a good neighbor. At the same time, we definitely need housing in our community. There's no doubt about that. So I appreciate your persistence on this, and we're looking forward to phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, or whatever else comes after this. So thanks.
We are as well. So we'll be here for a long time. So we want to be good neighbors. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions? How would you like to act on this item?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we approve the request for the final plat in item A of our agenda.
Is there a second?
I will second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just have a comment if I
Please.
can. I know we have been discussing this for a long time, and I agree with what Commissioner, or Mayor Pro Tem Skidmore had said, that, we take all of the things into consideration. And I do agree that the final plat is covering the necessary items, and I hope that the developer and neighboring landowners can come to agreements, and everybody ends up being really happy with this. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I would follow suit with Commissioner Graves. I think City Attorney Finch gives some really good clarity to me kind of on the legality of everything that's in this for us as well. I think housing is something that's drastically needed in Ottawa, and this is homes for 24 families or individuals soon, which I think is an amazing thing for the community. But I just want people to know we obviously have a lot of conversations and listen to a lot of input from people as well. And that voices are heard and are a part of our decision too. So.
Thank you. Any other comments? If I may, we've had a few conversations about this. I think we've had a lot of valuable information. I quite frankly don't think anything was held back from us. I've heard about fences and water runoff and everything from day one about this project. So I don't feel like Director Landis or anybody else, the Planning Commission, held anything back from us. Mr. Harris mentioned a couple projects that unfortunately went wrong, but there's also a myriad of projects out there that engineers sign off on that don't go wrong, that are perfectly fine. Hoping hearing the conversation that the developer just stated, I hope that there's a resolution that you two can come about that will certainly resolve the issue, the concerns that you have. And I think that they're sincere in what they're saying. So I wanted to thank the Planning Commission, your staff, you, and certainly Mr. Hamby for all the work that you guys have put into bringing us this information. So thank you all. If there's no other comments, can I have a roll call vote, please?
How do you vote, Mayor Pro Tem Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Commissioner Graves?
Yes.
And Mayor Crowley?
I vote yes. Motion is approved. Thank you. That'll move us on to item B.
Notice of indication to exceed revenue neutral rate.
Under the requirements of the 2021 Senate Bill 13, the governing body must communicate their intent regarding the revenue neutral rate for the 2024 budget to Franklin County, no later than July 20th. It is recommended the governing body vote to exceed the revenue neutral rate, setting the maximum mill rate at 44.895 and setting the public hearing date of September 6, 2023. Director Landis?
Thank you. The next two items are related to this short presentation, and I thought it would be prudent to just review a couple of the items that we've reviewed in the last several budget discussions, especially for the public that may not have been present or understand the reason behind needing to have this motion now as opposed to, or this now as opposed to later when we approve the budget. Next slide, please. The two items that are in front of you are a form that we need to provide to Franklin County that would consider the intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate and then consider setting the public hearing date. Next slide, please. This is the assessed valuation trend, and we've discussed that the valuation that came to us this year is $134 million, which means that each mill that is adopted as part of the 2024 budget will be equivalent to $134,085. That assessed valuation is 9.96% more than last year. And included in that, it's about a $12 million increase over last year, is about $2.8 million in new improvements and change in use. So those are improvements that have never been taxed before, or any changes of existing property that has never been taxed. Next slide, please. The SB 13, as you stated, directs that we'll give notice to the county clerk by July 20th, which is tomorrow. And the idea for that is that we need to notify them that we may potentially exceed the revenue neutral rate. What we've presented to you does, in fact, exceed the revenue neutral rate. You do have the option to lower what's been presented to you at a future time when we hold the public hearing. But the purpose of notifying the county clerk is so that they can notify all of the residents within the city limits of Ottawa to what the intent is, what the proposed mill levy is, and then also the public hearing date. And they will do that for every taxing entity. So they'll get notice of every taxing entity and the dates that will impact each one of those property taxpayers. Next slide, please. As an overview, the way that the revenue neutral rate is calculated is last year's budgeted ad valorem, or property taxes, which is the $5.6 million, against this year's assessed valuation, which is the $134 million. And to get the 41.842, you would take that times 1,000, and that is how the revenue neutral rate is calculated. So the purpose being that if you were to use last year's property tax dollars and keep them the same, this is what the mill levy would be that you would need to adopt to do so. Next slide, please. This is a summary that we've reviewed in the previous meetings. The only change made to this is that I did update the right column with the revenue neutral rate. If you remember, I discussed with you on Monday that, and we had changed the valuation based on a property we know that will change in value coming shortly, and as a result, they weren't able to physically recalculate that revenue neutral rate to put it on the form. We did receive that back, or the county clerk received back assistance from the state in doing so. She's provided the new valuation notice, so I've updated that to make sure that you have that available to you so that you would know that that revenue neutral rate is the 41.842. In the packet, a copy of that valuation notice was provided for you. Next slide, please. The mill rate trend here just shows that if you were to adopt the budget at the 44.895, which is what we've proposed to you, that you would see a decline of about 1.11 mils from last year. This trend just shows you the downward projection of that trend overall, and that we have been lowering the mill rate over time. That does not mean that the property taxes assigned to each property have been lowered over time. Next slide, please. This was a comparison of just a few cities that we've selected out of a publication that the League of Kansas Municipalities puts out. And this was for 2023, so this does not show your current mill rate. But if you see the highlighted Ottawa levy there, and note that what we're proposing is less than that, you can kind of see if everyone else were to hold their levies the same for this current year, then you can kind of put a comparison together. Of course, we don't know what they're proposing until they've also committed their forms back to their own county clerks, and that's been distributed and published as well. So just a comparison for you to take a look at. Next slide, please. This is a copy of the form that we'll be submitting to the county clerk tomorrow. It should you decide to approve the intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate. It establishes the public hearing date and the time, which would be September 6th. That is our first regular meeting in September, has a 7 p.m. date, so it is most available to the public for attendance. Next slide, please. And while this is not the current item that you're considering, it's the next one, it's item C. This is the public hearing notice that would go in the newspaper. It has all of the detail on it for each one of the funds, and when you do hold the public hearing, you can reduce the mill levy, you can reduce the expenditures by each fund individually, but you cannot increase any one of them. So just as a summary of where we are in the budget process so far, next slide, please. Today, you're considering the intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate and setting the public hearing date. And then on September 6th, should you choose to use that date, we would hold a public hearing to hear from the public any concerns with the proposed budget, and then consider adoption of the 24 budget at that time, and also adoption of the capital improvement program, which relates to the 24 budget at that time as well. Do you have questions about setting considering approval of the intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate, which is the item that's currently before you?
I don't necessarily have okay, I do have a question. I take that back. So I just want to make sure that individuals understand what it is we're doing, because it can be confusing. If you're just sitting there looking, you're thinking, I know if I was looking at my family's budget, I was thinking, okay, I'll spend the same money I did last year. What's the big deal? However, we know that in the last year, we approved this budget that we're working on over a year ago. And the cost of doing business, the cost of acquiring services, the cost of purchasing, spaghetti sauce has gone up, period. And so we are not immune to that rise in costs. And if we were to stay at the revenue neutral rate, it's high likely that we couldn't afford many of the amenities and many of the services that the city provides, correct?
That's true. If you were to reduce your budget back to the revenue neutral rate, and I do not have the exact number in front of me, but I want to say it's over $300,000 you would need to cut from any one of those budgets that you have control over, which is either debt service, which we have committed payments for, the general fund, or the auditorium.
So saying that, that would also mean that it's quite possible that we couldn't afford for salary increases for our firefighters or our police officers or our public utility individuals that in the middle of February, when it's snowing, and I know it's really hot out today, and we want them to clean our roads, may not get a salary increase, correct?
Or we would need to make some very serious considerations about other services that are provided currently, yes.
And what about health insurance? Did it stay? I mean, it's the same, right? We're not paying any more next year than we're paying right now, right?
Our initial estimate there was 13.6%, and we believe it's actually going to be a little bit higher than that.
So when you say 13.6%, it's a rise above 13% increase compared to what we're paying today.
Correct.
Our health insurance will go up that much. And when I say our health insurance, that's not health insurance that anybody at this dais is receiving. That's insurance that our employees are receiving.
That's correct.
And we want to make sure that we can include that and make sure that they are well taken care of, because a healthy employee is going to be a good employee. And we couldn't do that if we didn't raise our budget.
That's correct.
So it's not frivolous spending. It's things that are necessary. It's taking care of our employees. It's taking care of our roads. It's taking care of the things that city citizens expect us to take care of. Fair?
Yeah, that's fair. And I think in our previous discussions, we also shared with you that there are needs above and beyond what's even been presented to you, to the tune of several $100,000, probably nearing $1 million, that include things like replacement of vehicles and equipment, the things that are needed to even get their jobs done. And our staff does a really good job of just being able to stretch out those, the useful life of those items. Nothing on that list was a frivolous ask. Everything was a need. All of those things will be either pushed ahead or found some creative way to get it done without altering our services again.
So when Senate Bill 13 was actually put into place, and you know, individuals can go back in history and see where I stood on that, but the state is not doing the same hearing. They're not required to do the same hearing, correct? I mean, they don't have to let everybody know if they're exceeding their revenue neutral rate. In fact, they don't even plan their revenue neutral rate. But we do. And I'm glad. I'm glad that the citizens know exactly what we're spending, because that's our responsibility, is to let them know. I take it very seriously, and I think everybody up here does. And I'm sorry if I'm assuming tremendous amount today, but we all take it very seriously, every single dollar that is expended. If we bring in a dollar, it's also a dollar that's coming out of our pockets too, and we take that extremely seriously.
And Commissioners, if I may, the proposed budget is presented with a mill levy reduction, granted not to the extent that we would like to see, but the costs that we have, not just from private contractors, but through services that are essential to us provided by the county, and you know, they have increased costs, they have staffing concerns, they have retention concerns, and so it's things like 911 that we expect someone to be competent and capable and keep a stable and emotionally sound response when someone calls because a loved one's in distress. It's things like capturing 100% of the new construction that occurs here in the city, as well as the incentives that have been leveraged to promote housing and commercial and retail opportunities within our community, so that when those incentives come on board, we're able to capture that, because our citizens have asked for jobs, they've asked for housing, they've asked for low-cost services to be delivered to them, and that's something that I know you're working on and we at the staff level are working on every day. So the proposed budget captures 100% of this new construction and change in use, and it also reduces, because of that reduction and the amount that we're actually applying, reduces the impact of one's increased assessment that most of our property owners receive. So we've done what we can do to lessen that impact on our current property owners, while at the same time capturing the construction value for new construction and the incentives that we've provided to other individuals, rather than simply having our existing property base carry that burden for new residents and new businesses coming to our community.
Yeah, I appreciate Commissioner Kaler's comments. She's been on this commission, is it 12 years now, or is it pretty close to?
Sure.
Okay,
Yes,
pretty
actually it
close.
is 12, yes.
Well, she's seen 12 of these. I've been on 10 years. I've seen 10 of these budgets. And it is true that we do comb through these numbers carefully. It's our money we're spending as well, personally up here, all of us. And so we are extra diligent, I feel, in watching these expenses. I will add that we are adding some reserves to some of these funds. We've been woefully short several years in the past on keeping that going, and so that, you know, some of those reserves are a little higher this year than we've had in the past, which I think is a good plan for the future, and I think we need to be doing that. I just might end this with just saying that this is just the top end of it. There's still a few more things I think maybe we can reduce or cut out that I'm looking at personally, and that mill levy could come even lower. This is just the peak. We can't go any higher than this with regard to our special hearing on the revenue neutral rate. So I just want to add that to that. And I will make the motion we approve item B on our agenda with that said.
I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If I may, real quick, absolutely nobody likes paying taxes. And if you have a way that we can get out of paying those taxes and pay our bills, I'd lend an ear to you for sure. But I certainly, I know that the residents of Ottawa, when they dial out to 911, that they certainly want Chief Weingartner and Chief Matthias' staff to show up and take care of them in their time of distress. So certainly, it's a tough discussion, but one we have every year, and we certainly take it on. And the staff is the one that does yeoman's work, and we just kind of make sure everything kind of goes with what they suggest and what we might have some input on also. So thank the staff again. Any other comments? Can I have a roll call vote, please?
How do you vote, Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton?
Yes.
Commissioner Graves?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Skidmore?
Yes.
And Mayor Crowley.
I vote yes. Motion is approved. Item C.
Approval to set date for public hearing to 2024 operating budget.
The city is required to publish notice for the public hearing of intent to exceed revenue neutral rate and the hearing for the 2024 budget at least 10 days in advance of the hearing date. The hearing date is recommended to be set for September 6, 2023 at 7 p.m., and the public will have an opportunity to ask questions or give feedback to the governing body related to the proposed 2024 budget. The commission can decide to lower the ad valorem for each fund, but cannot be raised in any of the funds after publication. Director Landis.
Thank you. Could we go back one slide? Thank you. This is an image of what that publication will look like for your public. It will appear in the newspaper on our city webpage, and then they'll receive the notice from the county clerk as well with the set date for that public hearing. So if you have questions about what is included in this notice or any other budget questions, I'm happy to answer those for you.
I know it's not required, but will this be on our Facebook page website also? I know it's just an additional way of noticing the public.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that. Commissioners, any questions? How would you like to act?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move that we set the date for the public hearing to September 6th at 7 p.m.
I will second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Can I have a roll call vote, please?
How do you vote, Commissioner Clayton?
Yes.
Commissioner Graves?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Skidmore?
Yes.
And Mayor Crowley.
I vote yes. Motion is approved. Thank you, Director Landis.
Thank you all.
Item D.
Request for approval of resolution adopting rules of procedure for city commission meetings.
These procedures encourage public participation in an orderly manner and are based upon the Code of Meeting Procedures for Kansas Cities. Mr. Silcott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this resolution simply is a formal adoption of the rules that were voted for approval at the June 19th, 2023 regular city commission meeting after having been previously discussed on June 6th, June 12th, June 19th, and again, approved at the June 21st, I apologize, meeting. And that's about it.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? How would you like to act?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we approve item D under new business, request for approval of resolution adopting rules of procedure for city commission meetings.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Can I have a roll call vote, please?
How do you vote, Commissioner Graves?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton?
Yes.
And Mayor Crowley.
I vote yes. Motion is approved. Thank you. That'll move us on to item 9, which is comments by our city manager.
I have none at this time.
Thank you. Comments by city commissioners. Commissioner Graves,
I have no comment.
Commissioner Kaler,
None at this time.
Commissioner Clayton.
Long list. No, we've already hit on it several times, but I always like to reiterate that in the budget process, like you mentioned the yeoman's work, there are hours and hours and hours, hundreds of hours spent by staff, people sitting up here as well, reviewing these budget items before they come to us to approve. So we all take a lot of time to think through everything, even though it seems like we're up here for 5 minutes as we discuss and vote. There's been countless hours prior to that for the last few months. And there's lots of meetings people can watch to kind of go over that stuff as well. So just want to mention that, and that is it.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Skidmore.
Yes, just for those listening, I know I've had several people ask me about the chicken ordinance we've been talking about some, and we haven't forgotten you. I want to mention that. Call it municipal triage, whatever you want to, but there's been some other issues that have come up that are very important as well, and we're dealing with those, and soon we will be talking about chickens. So please be patient with us. We'll get there. And that's all I've got.
Thank you. I have no comments. I do have a few announcements. July 24th, we have a study session here at City Hall at 4 p.m. Then our July 31st study session at 4 p.m. here at City Hall. And then our August 2nd regular meeting at 7 p.m. here at City Hall. Is there anything else to come before the commission?